Anbennar is the best EU4 mod. Full stop. That's the video. Anbennar is a fantasy total overhaul mod for Europa Universalis 4, sitting on a completely original world that uses the existing mechanics of EU4 mixed with its own take on D&D races while still having plenty of things of its own going on. Now usually when I talk about mods, I tend to do some background into how it was made, but for this one I found so much shit that it needs its own small section. So the lore work for this mod started in 2014 and was created by the lead dev JBean. But it wasn't until 2017 that they start work on the mod itself as part of their dissertation. And like any good fantasy setting, we aren't working with a peaceful kingdom that's about to have its first big war. Instead, several world-altering events have already happened with centuries of lore in the background, along with the shit that's coming down the pipeline built on top of it. I'll go into some examples as we go, but I tend to find a lot of pretty good mods that have one interesting story, and the entire world is pointed at the creator's favourite nation, meaning there's only really one place worth playing. The best mods, Anbennar included, have multiple incredibly well developed nations, many of which might not ever interact with each other. You can probably tell already, but I fell in deep on this mod. I'll note here though, compared to something like the New Order, this is a more open-ended mod, which has its own set of pros and cons. Though a lot of nations have well-developed mission trees and event chains to guide you through their stories anyway. So, if you haven't played EU4, I have an okay video on it. It's a big game, so even there I couldn't cover everything. But by and large, I won't be explaining EU4 mechanics here unless the mod has a huge twist, though most stuff is straightforward. Starting with the world, it's similar to the EU4 setting in some ways. You have a pseudo-Holy Roman Empire and a rough approximation of Europe and Asia, as well as a new world waiting to be rediscovered just across the ocean. Though this new world kinda had a nuke go off in it 2 centuries ago. Moving back east, you have the orc tides that nearly wiped out Europe, and now the old dwarf kingdoms tried to reclaim the entire mountain that they had mined out and industrialized before the orcs tore through them. There's still more stuff that I'm leaving out, so basically, imagine an entirely new fantasy world running on the EU4 engine, taking some inspiration from our world. It's hard to understate how much I enjoyed the Paradox Grand Strategy games. I've sunk a lot of time into them, so when I say a good overhaul mod like this feels fresh and new, I really mean that you're getting a whole new game for free. So any complaints are definitely being filtered through the lens that I know that a lot of talented people are giving this to me for free. So what makes this mod good? I think it's a mix of ambition and attention to detail. The first campaign I played was as the Asra expedition, a group of dwarves trying to reclaim their homeland inside the Serpentine Mountains. Basically, the whole place is infested with orcs and goblins, some organised into nations, though others are just scattered around areas that you'll need to colonise. This mountain chain is massive, spanning the length of a whole continent. So inside there's all sorts of old dwarven holds, as well as dozens of other groups looking to take you out. It really gave me the exact feeling of the Lord of the Rings scene when they enter the old dwarven city, only to have orcs come out of every single corner. The early campaign for the expedition has you colonising the old railways before you eventually get some holds and start having to fight against other dwarves and orcs. There's entire mechanics about repairing and digging deeper into the holds, and each one has a backstory allowing you to restore them to a nation, with a good few having huge mission trees behind them. It's a decently tough campaign that does require a bit of knowledge of EU4, but when you start hearing rumours of sounds in the depths of your capital and a feeling of being watched, it does give an ominous vibe. And I really did feel isolated from the outside world as well. The nations to the west were dealing with religious wars and huge discoveries that get referenced in their campaigns, while I was fighting hordes of orcs for hundreds of years on the inside of the mountains, never really dealing with anyone else. Also, I never thought a snaking linear tunnel system would make for interesting wars, but it was a really unique and fun way to play EU4. The Dwarven run even has options to let you restore the old railways, giving all sorts of bonuses to movement, trade, and institution spread, which I thought was really interesting. Basically, if the entire mod was just this campaign, I'd have gotten dozens of hours of real entertainment out of Anbennar, but the Dwarven Mountains was just one part of this huge mod. So I'm not going to go into that kind of detail for every nation, but just to touch on how many big options there are, I played 5 full campaigns, each with completely unique mechanics for this review, and it's honestly not since the New Order that I've been this blown away by a mod. You've got the gnomes reclaiming their homeland from the dragon cult, then exploring the new world. You've got the Magisterium, who are kind of going crazy with magic, trying to build a huge tower on an equally magic island. Then I tried the Fae-worshipping Runeborn nations, who have a ton of unique events, 5 religions based on the seasons and the harmony between them, and another huge mission tree that is slightly different depending on which religion your starting nation is when you get to their formable nation. There's even more as well. My latest campaigns were trying out the Mafia Syndicate city that's still under development, before hopping into the Harem and Empire Building Jadar campaign. But my point is basically, base game EU4 doesn't have stories like this. Obviously you have things like the foundation of Prussia and Germany or trying to recreate historic empires, but you don't have the gnomes trying to reclaim their homeland from the dragon cult shit, as well as the liberties that they could take with army compositions for the different races and their tech trees. And on top of the nations and their unique religions and stories, magic. So not every nation has this or gets rulers who know how to do it, but there's a whole magic system built into this mod. Basically, rulers can learn spells and either during war or peacetime activate a bunch of buffs for their nations. They can get pretty powerful but are decently expensive, and I guess the best way I can describe them is like having access to very powerful events whenever you want if your ruler has a high enough rank in the School of Magic. Now this video is never going to cover all the aspects of this mod, or even all the ways existing DLC or base game features have been repurposed for the new world, so I'll hit up one or two last things, then disappear for the next few weeks. Some really cool nations are in development currently, so you might stumble on some bugs or unfinished nations. Like I mentioned at the start, I recognize this is a free mod, so I genuinely don't mind when I find bugs, but I thought I should mention them in case you run into them when you check this out. Also, this mod added original music, which is something not many mods do. I've had it playing in the background for this video, but it's pretty solid stuff, and it's just another example of the effort put into this mod on top of all the other custom art and code. I do have 2 small complaints, emphasis on small though. I think the balancing does need a little bit of work. I understand and honestly appreciate that some nations are meant to be proper challenges, and if anything that's a great feature of the mod for people who know EU4 inside and out. But one of the crisis events that a nation has to face put my country, which was making 100 gold per month, in like 30,000 gold debt, which I don't think is really possible to fix. At least when I had several nations ready to eat me alive after a bankruptcy debuff. I would leave it open that I'm just a bad player or had missed something obvious, but it didn't feel balanced to me anyway. There's a few other examples from my playtime, but I think the various devs have been fixing the unintentional ones, so I don't want to immortalize short-lived bugs in my equally short-lived video. Secondly, and this isn't really an issue with the mod, but an extension of the base game's issues, but so many cool features in this mod are reskins and extensions of features from DLC. The mod page on Steam talks about what features are affected by what DLCs, but it is kind of sad to have any part of this amazing mod gated behind base game DLCs. There's nothing the devs could do about it, but it's still a shame, especially for players who don't own all the DLC already. Those small issues aside, if you have EU4, I'd highly recommend checking out this mod, and I'd honestly even consider getting the game just to try it. As I said at the start, I truly think that this is the greatest mod that I've ever tried for EU4, and after nearly a decade of playing the game, I was shocked at how many new experiences they could cram into one single mod. This video genuinely would have been out a week or two sooner, probably 3 or 4 weeks at this point, if I didn't keep going back in for more of this mod. But I'm genuinely thankful for the people who left comments telling me to check it out, and if it weren't for you, I don't know how long it would have been before I got around to it. Anyway, I'm going to disappear back into the abyss. Thanks so much for watching, and make sure to like and comment and check out my older videos. I'm always looking for more games or mods to cover, so make sure to let me know if you have any in mind. Until next time though, thanks.